Here's Cam Robinson, the Director of Content and Film Scouting for Elite Prospects, who joins us from the rink where he is underdressed. Of all the people to not show up to the rink, like he's in more rinks than anybody I know, and he makes the classic mistake on August 11th to wear a T-shirt to the rink.
Not in mid-season form, but maybe Redwood should bring me out because I chipped in for birdie on 9 last night. So I'm flying, boys. I'm flying. I'm feeling
maybe
great.
You should teach the chipping lesson now, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Tell us everything you did, Cam. Like, walk us through this. No.
Yeah, I hit it well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got lucky.
Yes. Yeah.
Buddy, I know you saw, as we did, the talk out of New York and Larry Brooks of the New York Post, that JT Miller could be a candidate to be New York Rangers captain. We're asking on our Bogey Juice poll question if that stirs any emotions for you, if you have a reaction to JT Miller as potentially a captain of the Rangers.
I mean, it's not surprising. He is a leader. He is, without question, a leader. It's just he is a specific brand of leader. And those guys have their roles and they have their places. And in some teams and in some dressing rooms, that hard line, that really emotional, physical leader, that sometimes can work, and that can sometimes, bring the best out of some players. I work with a coach who reminds me of JT a little bit too, and he is loud and he is vocal and he is hard on guys. Some kids absolutely love it. Some kids just, crater underneath it too. So if that Rangers dressing room is someone, is a group that needs that kind of motivation, I think you could go with a worse player. But he's a good player and he's a motivator. And so it wouldn't shock me if that was the guy. It might be a little surprising just because of how short he's been on the team, but he's got the length of contract that he's going to be around for a while. So it's not the craziest thing.
It's not unlike going with a blustery coach, right? It's a conscious decision. You have to know the group of players that you've got and roll the dice that it'll work with that particular group. And sometimes it does. I'm amazed that John Tortorella has continued to coach as late as he has in this league.
Yeah, usually a short lifespan on those types of coaches. Yeah. And so you would imagine it's going to be a bit of a shorter lifespan on that type of leader in a dressing room as well. So maybe after year 3, 4, 5, maybe the kick in the pants doesn't really elicit the response that you want anymore.
And maybe you go with you do a salt and pepper situation where you've got, he might be the captain. You have a softer guy as the lead assistant and good cop, bad cop, if you will.
For sure.
And then there's the other theory, as I talked about in the opening of the program. He's just going to want to run the room anyways, so you can probably save yourself from heartache by putting a letter on and adorning that, because it's going to happen whether he's wearing a letter or not.
Leaders are going to lead.
Let's move on to the Vancouver Canucks. Now, look, for those who speak fluent Swedish, they would tell you it is not a word that is a literal translation to revenge or convey exactly that sentiment, that emotion so strongly. But he's talking about bouncing back. He's talking about shoving it up everybody and all his critics from last year. What did you make of Elias's comments last week?
I do not speak fluent Swedish, but revenge is what I took from that. And it's the Elias Pettersson revenge tour, right? He's calling it right now. He's saying the right things. The fact that he said he's also put on some muscle, you love to hear that, right? For a guy who's it's been a long build to try to fill out that frame. So the fact that he's gone back and he's obviously working very hard, it's tough to put on muscle, especially with a body frame like his. So he's obviously working hard. He's got the right mindset. He's saying the right things. And now it's about doing it, right? He's got to come back. We're going to see right away at training camp, like how good a shape are you in? How strong, how fast are you looking dialed in? And that's when we're going to kind of get that first little bench knock and then move on from there.
Have you heard anything further on his training there, Cam? Because I know you had some info earlier in the summer on that.
Yeah, he stuck with the same group. He was with the same group there in Stockholm. That was what I heard in June when he went back, or July, early July there, that he was working with the same group. And it's maybe it'll work for him this year. Maybe I don't know if they switched up what they're doing with him. I have no idea exactly what they're working with. But it is with the same group in Stockholm. Yes.
Do you recall a stretch where he has appeared to be determined, to be intense? Is that in Elias Pettersson, do you think?
I think so. Absolutely. I think we saw stretches of it in most of his first few years in the league, I would say, even when he was putting up those 60-point seasons or whatever, right? That we saw, the one that really kind of jumps out to me is, do you remember that play several years ago now where he came out of the penalty box and he just went flying back, picked up the puck, went wide, beat the guy wide, went to the net and scored that goal falling down? You like that whole mentality was like, he was mad that he got the penalty and he's like, here's what I'm going to do about it. And so you can see that intensity in him, right? Or like, coming back and blowing a guy up with a big body check. Like, we've seen him do those things before. And we've seen him do it consistently, like game over game, week over week. It's just maybe not for like an entirety of a month or the entirety of the season. But I do think he has that in him. And I think that just like, we talked about JT being that, that really emotional leader, is that, I think that sometimes it takes players a little while to find some of that fire in them too. He's never going to be a JT Miller-like player with that intensity, but I do think that he can grow into it a little bit more and find that switch a little more often.
Which wingers do you like playing with Pettersson on this team now? Cam, of course, Besser's back, surprisingly. DeBrusk was always there, was supposed to be a solution. We added Vander Kane to the mix, and Connor Garland took such a big step last year, or moved his way up the lineup last year. What wingers do you like with Pettersson going forward?
Yeah, it's as usual. I'm sure we'll see a rotating cast. DeBrusk was sold on the fact that he was going to get to play with Pettersson. That was part of the sell job to get him to sign there, and so I think that they will continue to give him looks there. I've always liked the connection that him and Besser have together. I know it hasn't worked all of the time, but I do think that they mesh well together. But I am interested to see if they give Evander Kane a look there, because that's going to bring that little bit more physicality, right? He has speed. He has a good shot. Just a different look than what they've had previously with Pettersson. So I'm sure they're going to give that a try too, to see if he can muck it up a little bit and do the dirty work and allow Pettersson to find soft areas a little bit more. And so, I'd be open to having a rotating cast of those three. Garland, he has that fire as well a little bit too. He's a digger. He gets that net front. He chokes up on his stick really high. So I think they definitely have some options. And what you're going to want to do is that you're going to try some things at camp. You're going to try some things early in the season, and you're going to hope that at least one of those guys clicks. And I'm a big proponent of a center and a winger pair, and you basically lock those guys at the hip unless something happens. And so one of those guys, and I would guess DeBrusk probably has the inside lane on that at this point, but one of those guys is going to get locked with Pettersson for the long haul.
Four pretty clear wingers, but the combinations we'll find out. Two of them will be with Elias Pettersson, and two of them will be with whom? We are still awaiting for clarity on that as we get into now this second week of August. Does that surprise you here, or do you suspect that this is going to still take weeks before we do get any clarity here?
I would imagine it's still a ways away. Maybe Jack Roslovic signs this afternoon, and I'm completely out to lunch on that if it is Vancouver. But I do think, at this point, you have to assume that they are going in, it's hoping and praying that Phil Pedal can be a second line center for them. He can be healthy and that he can take a step forward, and that is a big hope if that is what they're going for. But I think we're looking, especially with you see some of these RFAs that haven't signed yet, the pinch point now becomes camp. People are coming back from the cottages at this point. People are getting back to work. Holinka's starting up today. So everything's going to start moving and flowing a little bit now. But I do think that we're going to look at training camp as the next kind of pinch point for those guys to sign, maybe Roslovic to sign. Maybe we start to see some trades start to sprinkle in too at the end of August, early September. So there is potential for them to get some further clarity in the next 4 to 6 weeks, which I'm sure they want to do. But at the end of the day, they might just have to sit on that cap space and hope that Phil Pedal can do the job.
Do you think the longer this goes, the more likely it is with Rossi and McTavish they return to their organizations? Or do you think the longer this goes, the more likely it is we'll see a trade?
With McTavish, I've always felt he was going to stay in Anaheim. I did, and I still do. I think what the issue with them is that he would like a nice, big, fat, long-term deal that pays him out, and I think Anaheim would like to bridge him. And what we'll probably see is, maybe Verbeek wins because that guy, he manages like he played. But, maybe like it's like a Byfield type of deal. Maybe they meet in the middle and it's like a 5-year deal and he's getting paid 6.5 or something like that. But I think that gets done. Rossi's more interesting. I checked around, the last couple of days and basically nothing has changed. I was told a while ago that they hadn't even really talked contract since like early June. Again, like I mentioned, training camp will be kind of where the rubber meets the road there. It's like, are you going to come back and play for us at the number we want, or are you going to sit out? And I think that's maybe the direction it is going in. I'm sure Rossi wants to play. I'm sure Minnesota wants to get a return for him. And if they don't, they want him at the number that they like. So that one's going to be more interesting. I think there's more potential that he still gets dealt.
There's reporting out of Boston around Casey Middlestad and Pavel Zacha. How big, if any, an upgrade would securing one of those guys be to the Canucks second line center?
Yeah, that would both would represent upgrades. I would feel. I like Middlestat. I think that they bring different qualities to their game, but I think Middlestat has a little bit higher pure offensive skill. Zach is the bigger body and kind of can bang a little bit more, but does he has a couple of decent seasons under his belt too. Price to acquire, it's not going to be cheap for either of those players, I don't think. Boston's probably going to be a little more open to moving out right now. I think they're in a transitional phase, but yes, I think Vancouver, I'm sure, would be calling on both those players.
Go ahead.
What is your intelligence on Vitali Kravtsov's signing with the Vancouver Canucks? He played, and I remember 0 of them, 16 games in 22-23. Literally, I don't know what I was doing during those months, but I was not watching Vitali Kravtsov. But he had unmitigated success the last couple of years in the KHL. We're talking Andrei Kuzmenko kind of numbers, which I'm just trying to make that comparison because people were very optimistic about Kuzmenko's arrival here, that, hey, I think it'll translate. But I don't feel like I'm feeling that same sort of optimism around Kravtsov. Is that fair to him? What do you make of it all?
I think that it is a excellent low risk move, especially to bring him in, on a 2-way deal. Yeah, he's getting a good, good chunk of change there in the American League if that's where he ends up, but that's just fine. He took steps, and I talked to some people that scout and watch, the KHL a lot more than I did the last year, and he was good. Yeah, I was told that he was very good. The big thing on him is that it's been a work rate issue, right? He hasn't always given everything that coaches felt he could give, and that's frustrating. And so, from reports is that he's found another level. Now, can he find another level here in North America? That's the big question. But I think you bring him into camp and you have him there, and it's him or Lekirmak. Both aren't making this team, and I would say that he probably has a better chance of making it than Lekirmak does at this point. But if he doesn't, now he's in the American League, and you've got yourself a good top of the lineup player to bring up and down and be a quad A for you. And who knows? Like, remember Valeri Nichushkin? He went back, right? He struggled mightily in the NHL. He went back to the K. He did well. He came back, and he's a real player. Not to say that Kravtsov is going to be Nichushkin, but we have seen that path happen before. And so super low risk, maybe you get yourself a top 9 winger out of it.
Well, what I was saying with regards to Kuzmenko, the difference being here is that he does know what's expected of him. Like, Kuzmenko was coming across, and having never played in North America, we didn't know if he would, we suspected that he would have trouble with the details, and he did. Yeah. Kravtsov knows that everybody's thinking that about him. Like, he's coming back with eyes wide open, you would hope.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's a leg up. He knows what to expect. He knows what to expect from coaching staffs over here. He knows what the style of play is. The pace of play. So you're right. He should be better suited to transition than a player like Kuzmenko was, who was older, I believe, at the time when he crossed as well too. So still not a relatively young player still too. So like I said, I do like that they brought him back over to give him another kick at the can.
Can he? It's nearly a point per game in the K. What can you tell me about K stats translating to NHL? And do you see him as a scorer? Like, what is his profile? What is his role in the NHL if he's everything he can be?
He's a dual threat offensive player. Like, he can score and he can pass, and he has a good head on his shoulders offensively. I think he can be a very complimentary player on one of your top 3 lines if if he has the speed and he has the tenacity to get to the places you need to get to, and the responsibility to not be a complete liability in his own zone. And those are big things to ask of a player. But I do think offensively he can play at a level high enough to, if to score 20 goals and to maybe put up 45, 50 points, something like that. I do think that that's a realistic thing that he could do. It's just, can he fill in those other gaps enough to see the minutes needed to get those points?
Yeah. Lastly here, Cam, we did an item in the opening block. Paul Coffey wasn't very happy about losing Evander Kane, thought he was a type of profile player the Oilers needed. Everybody looks at that team and says, no, the profile you need is a starting legitimate number one NHL goalie. You've heard some rumblings on the Oilers goaltender search.
I do think that they're looking, and now they're not looking for they might be, but not that I've heard, that they're looking a little more long term. They've got their field of vision a little bit wider here. I was told that they've contacted Detroit. I believe the first person they asked about was Trey Augustine, and I think that was just a non-starter. Is that Steve Yzerman and company really, really love that kid, and as they should. But they have a 6'6", 6'7" former first rounder in Sebastian Cossa sitting there, who's slowly been progressing up the way. Played a full season in the East Coast League there. I think he put up a 9-11 in the American League. They're not soured on him by any means, but I think maybe they're hoping that he'd be quicker along the path. And the fact that they have Augustine there in the Red Wing system allows him to potentially be an expendable chip. Now, there's no pinch point for Detroit, though. They don't have to move this guy. He's still young. They have his rights for years yet. But if Edmonton does want to get themselves someone that they can tag as here's our goalie of the future that maybe is only a year, 2 years away, he'd be a great bet to go on. First round picks get a lot more opportunities than most, but he could still be a very good player.
He's the 15th overall pick in 2021. He played for the Edmonton Oil Kings. He did. Even played some junior hockey up in Fort Mac, Alberta. And you're right, Augustine, of course, you might remember that name from former U.S. World Junior teams, the couple of nice goaltending prospects there in Detroit. And, of course, as everyone has talked about all summer, the Yzer plan needs to be kicked into gear here there in the Motor City. People getting a little impatient, and rightfully so. Awesome stuff, Cam. Warm up there at the rink. We'll catch up next week, buddy. Thanks for this.
Cheers. Thanks, boys.